We're ready to proceed.
Great. Good morning. My name is Mike Layton, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of the Toronto Atmospheric Fund. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'd like to now call the TAF Board Meeting 8 to order. Welcome, everyone. This meeting is being held using the city's WebEx technology, with members and staff connecting by video conferencing or calling in. Because we are meeting remotely, we ask that for your patience and with any delays and technical issues. Members of the public can observe the meeting on YouTube. I also ask that all members and staff keep their microphones on mute unless you need to answer a question or speak. If any members wish to speak, please make sure your video is on and you raise your hand. Or unmute your mic and indicate your intention to speak, and I will create a speakers list. When voting, I ask that members make sure that your video is turned on and raise your hands to indicate your vote. Members, I want to remind you that if you have any motions, please send them in writing to the clerk at tafboard@toronto.ca. Although we are meeting remotely, the Board of Directors of the Toronto Atmospheric Fund acknowledges the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississaugas of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflicts of Interest Act? Seeing none. Next, we have a motion to confirm the minutes from the meeting February 14th, 2020, May 21st, 2020, and July 6th, 2020. I have a motion, Councillor McKelvey. All those in favor? Opposed? That carried. We have 7 items on the agenda. Let's proceed with the agenda in the order that the items are listed. The first item is TA 8.1 Chief Executive Officer's Report. I'll ask TAF CEO Julia to provide an overview of her report. Go ahead, Julia. Julia, you're on mute. Please unmute. Perfect.
I'm wondering whether we want to go through the agenda and potentially reorder. We have a guest to make a presentation, so maybe we can do that at the top.
Well, can I have a motion to take item TA 8.2, Low Carbon Cities Canada, first? Is that what you're referring to, Julia?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. All right. I'll take that motion. Thank you. I think that was Councillor Carroll. All those in favor? Opposed? That carried. So let's jump right into the presentation on TA 8.2, Low Carbon Cities Canada, LC3 Network and National Office. I'll ask CEO Julia to introduce the presentation.
Great. Thank you. So as you know, we had a special board meeting a few weeks ago to consider, and the board approved the funding agreement between TAF, the city, and FCM, conditional, of course, on a couple of key matters being confirmed by the federal government. And we had some discussion about the terms, including about the role of the national office, how TAF would engage with the wider LC3 network. And in thinking about this, and we've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to bring that agreement to you, but I thought that it would be very useful to have a perspective about the national office and about this network and how that leverages TAF's expertise and how we will benefit from the network and work with FCM in a partnership model. We've been negotiating, but as I said to the FCM team, now it was this new opportunity to really get into the partnership, which is a long-term one. So, and as you know, also Mary Pickering, who's our VP for Strategy and Partnerships, was seconded. I put that in quotes because it's actually a contract with FCM, but for 18 months to really help bring some of that TAF knowledge and expertise to the rollout of the LC3 network. So she's been working very closely with FCM for 4 days a week to do that. And so I'll hand this over to Mary and to Kate Fleming, who is our colleague at FCM, who is the manager responsible for the LC3 program, who've been beavering away to get these agreements done, to get the accountability and oversight model worked out, and to really make this network sing. So I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you, Julia. Good morning, everyone. It's very nice to see everybody again. And can everyone hear me? Am I good? As Julia says, there's been a lot of focus on the term sheet and the contribution agreement over the last while, and we know how important that is. But she says there's been a lot of effort going on in the background to develop this unique LC3 network, Low Carbon Cities Canada network, which is designed to support the efforts of all the centres as they emerge, as well as TAF. And so we want to share with you today a little bit about what's happening, the shape of that thing, some of the benefits. It's still forming. You know, this is evolving. This is a very new kind of effort, but there has been some significant thought and work put into it. So we want to share that with you today. And I'm really pleased to be able to introduce you to my colleague, Kate Fleming, who's the Program Director for Low Carbon Cities Canada, and also a member of the senior management team at the Green Municipal Fund. Kate's been in the saddle in this role since last August. And she's also had significant experience in the nonprofit sector over 20 years. She's already launched one successful program at FCM, the Municipal Asset Management Program, which is a $50 million program that was successfully renewed in 2019. And she also has quite a bit of experience with private initiatives as well. In her previous role at Sustainable Development Technology Canada, she worked with over 100 startups. So Kate has a lot to bring to this role, and I'm really pleased to introduce her to you today, and she's going to kick off our presentation.
Thanks very much, Mary, and thanks, Julia. And thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. It's a pleasure to be here today. Can everybody hear me? Let me just get a yes. Excellent. Thank you. Are we going to bring up the presentation, or how will that work, Mary?
We are at City Hall. This is Carol from the City Clerk's office, and we're just putting the presentation up for you, so you can just cue us when you're ready to go to the next slide.
Next slide, please. That's wonderful. Thank you. So some of this will definitely be familiar to you. The National Office really began its work formally when I started in August of 2019, but the network has existed for actually a few years. The work that TAF and the other host organizations they've been working together for actually 3 years now to bring this network to fruition. And so the network consists of 7 centers supported by 6 host entities. Alberta Eco Trust has 2 centers, one in Edmonton and one in Calgary. And in fact, the Montreal metropolitan community is supported. The Trottier Family Foundation helped to create a not-for-profit entity called the Greater Montreal Climate Fund in January. It was successfully incorporated, and we're now working with this new entity to fulfill the role for the Montreal metropolitan community. So in total, there's about 140, 145, depending on how you draw the boundaries around the metropolitan Montreal community. The municipalities that are supported by these 7 centers, and then with FCM fulfilling its role as the national office. If you go to the next slide, please. So the role of the national office is really twofold. One is in our role as intermediary between the federal government and with the centers is really an oversight and accountability. The terms and conditions for the LC3 network and the terms to transfer the endowments and operating funds to each center are built into the GMF contribution agreement with the Government of Canada. The signatories to that are FCM and the federal government. There are 3 departments that are signatories to that agreement: Infrastructure Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, and Natural Resources Canada, with Natural Resources Canada essentially being the lead on the LC3 file. The second part of the national office is really about the support services to help increase the visibility of the LC3 network, increase support for the mandate, and to maximize the opportunities for leveraging of all kinds, not just financial leveraging, but partnerships and collaboration across the country. And so when it comes to looking at how we operationalize the national office, we really need to be mindful of those two obligations. If you can go to the next slide, please. So at this moment, we've designed a startup phase to last for the first 18 months, so starting essentially in September of last year and running to the end of the 2020-2021 fiscal year. So FCM being supported by the federal government, we operate on the federal government fiscal year running from April 1st to March 31st. And so our startup phase will run to March 31st of 2021. At the end of that startup phase, the intention is that we will have transferred funding to all of the entities, including the entity that is selected by Metro Vancouver and the City of Vancouver, who are working collaboratively right now to identify a host organization. And so really what that involves is setting up the terms and conditions for transferring the funds, as well as the systems and the tools and the processes by which we're going to operate, report, and meet our obligations under the funding agreement with Canada. Not to mention the importance of having a common framework upon which we're then going to measure and report on how successful we are in meeting that original mandate that was tabled in the proposal by the LC3s to the government. Let me just make sure in my notes I'm not missing anything else here. Oh, in addition to what's on this slide here, we also we advanced funds, some of the operating funds, to the other centres. At the time, TAF had not had any upfront operating startup funds, and so part of the startup phase involved advancing some of those operating funds to the centres so that they could start to hire and incur some of the costs that they needed to get their centres up and running. Next slide, please. And the next slide. So the next couple of slides are really going to be about the governance and the financial models upon which the national office will operate. So there's essentially three main bodies that have three separate functions. So the LC3 Network Executive is a committee that has been meeting weekly for, Mary, you'll have to tell me for how long. It sounds like it's been a very, very long time that these weekly Thursday calls have been happening.
18 months.
So, and that's really about the management and the operations of the national office. We work very collaboratively with each of the centres to make sure that decisions are made on a consensus basis, that we consult with the network to ensure that what we're putting forward is doable and achievable. We then have GMF Council, which is a body that advises our FCM Board of Directors. And GMF Council, when the new funding that we were awarded under Budget 2019 came through, so there was $950 million in Budget 2019, amongst which the LC3 funds were a part of it. Because of the uniqueness of the LC3 network and the obligations that we have for oversight through the LC3 funding, GMF Council elected to create a special committee to oversee and advise the LC3s for in perpetuity. And so this network, this committee, we formed in the process. We launched the process in December, and we had a panel that consisted of several of the LC3 representatives and ourselves, as well as the GMF chair, Councillor Ben Henderson from the City of Edmonton. And we selected 7 members to sit on this committee, some of which I think will probably be familiar to you. John Frank from the Van City Community Investment Bank, or formerly of CoPower. Ralph Torrey, who I know needs no introduction. Ben Henderson, who, as our GMF chair, is is a member of all committees. The chair of the committee is Joyce Henry. She's the Director General from Natural Resources Canada. We have a member of the GMF Investment Committee that sits at the table, as well as Sydney Ribault from the City of Montreal and Alison Ashcroft from CUSP. It was truly, as Ben would call it, an embarrassment of riches in terms of the quality of the people that were willing to, that were interested in populating this committee. And I think the committee is still finding its footing. They are tremendously passionate about the network and its potential. And it's really about finding the role between wanting to really get involved into the network and the strategies that the LC3 entities are looking to develop, and its role as an oversight body. But it is coming along, and Mary and I have been doing quite a bit of work with the committee to get that advice from them and ensure that we solidify that accountability role, oversight role, because ultimately the accountability of our funding agreement with the Government of Canada lies with FCM's Board of Directors. I do see a familiar face with Councillor Layton, who is a member of the Board of Directors at FCM. And so our board is 75 members large, and they are represented by an executive committee, which is essentially does most of the day-to-day decision-making on behalf of the FCM Board of Directors. So the agreement and the recommendation to transfer the funds to TAF will go from GMF Council to FCM's Executive Committee, and they will be the ones who are accountable for making the decision to transfer the funds. Next slide, please. So the National Office financing model, in the funding agreement, as part of the funding agreement, FCM, and more specifically GMF, was permitted to draw $6 million as a National Office operating fund, which is essentially a fund that is meant to last at least the first 5 years of the operations. The operating fund also includes any interest that FCM accrues on the LC3 funds until they are dispersed to the LC3 entities, and that those funds are then ring-fenced and will be used to support the network until they are depleted. At this point in time, they're projected to last at least 8 years, depending on the network's operating spending decisions. The budget is essentially based on the obligations that we have to deliver our oversight and accountability role, as well as the support services that we've agreed to with the LC3 network. There's also a small budget in each year for some supplementary expenses, depending on the needs of the LC3 network, for them to determine where they would like to have additional spending, where we can deliver additional services. One of those such services is actually to support knowledge transfer between TAF and the LC3s related to direct investing, as an example. And then if there are additional costs over and above the budget, as long as they're agreed upon between the network, we can incur additional costs as well. So that drawdown will depend really on the network's decisions going forward. At this point in time, for the first 5 years, our average annual service fees is about 0.5% of the LC3's nominal value. And so recognizing that the nominal value was 165 million, but is now 157.5 million, with the additional opportunity to transfer some upfront, some of the endowment amount to upfront OPEX. And this, both the FCM agreement with the Government of Canada and the agreements that are signed with each of the LC3s, those are subject to assessment on a 5-year clock cycle. And so that aligns with our evaluation and audit cycle with the federal government as well. So we'll take the learnings from the first 5 years and assess this model going forward. Next slide, please. And the next slide. Thank you. So essentially, the team is a fairly lean one at this point in time. Thank goodness for Mary. We have very complementary skill sets. Mary and I have been focused primarily on, working between FCM and the LC3s to establish the legalese, so to speak, and the operational processes that we'll use to move this arrangement forward, while Mary has been focusing not only on supporting those negotiations, but in addition working on delivering the service and the knowledge transfer from TAF to the other LC3 entities who have been in the process of hiring executive directors for their centers. And so Mary has been working very closely with them to start to establish that knowledge transfer and looking at the processes for our common theory of change and performance measurement framework. Oscar Espinosa is also on my team. He's come to us he worked with the Greater London Authority across the pond, as well as more recently with Open North, and has a great depth of program management expertise, and he's been a really welcome addition to the team in recent months. Apart from that, if you can go to the next slide, please. We have some bits and pieces of other various staff within FCM that we draw upon to deliver the services of the national office. The individual you see in the photo here, Jeremy Klein, is my colleague in finance. He's our senior investment manager. He is the individual who will be the non-voting participant on everyone's investment committees across the network. And he really will be a resource that the host centers can draw upon to contribute to the investment committees. Jeremy has a very strong resume, having recently returned from, well, not recently, I guess about 4 years ago, returned from Switzerland, working with several large funds overseas. We also have accounting and financial support, communications and graphics support. We have legal support, which we are using our own internal legal counsel to most of the work on the drafting of the agreements. We also have several other individuals who we've been borrowing on a short-term basis, which are not included in the budget of the national office. Our senior manager of performance and governance, who's been chairing a working group to look at developing common metrics and methodologies for greenhouse gas emission quantification for the network, knowledge transfer and program design specialists, and of course our government relations staff within our policy and public affairs team who've been working behind the scenes to help move things along with our federal colleagues to get the responses that we need. Next slide, please. I think that concludes my part of the presentation. I think, Mary, what we'll do is save questions for the end. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I'm going to talk a little bit about reporting. If I could have the next slide, please. These reporting requirements are part of our term sheet and contribution agreement, and so in that aspect, you will have seen them. And what I wanted to talk about a little bit is, kind of our modus operandi in developing this suite of metrics from TAF's perspective was to try and ensure that we, minimize the burden of additional reporting that we had to do. And I think I can say that we feel pleased that we've been quite successful in doing that. All these items you see here are quite aligned with what we provide already in our quarterly report to the board and in our annual plans, budgets, and reports to the board. And when we received the provincial endowment, Julie and I worked very hard to align these at that time as well. You may see a few small additional items in your regular reports to comply with some of the Canada Fund requirements. But on the whole, what we have here is a fairly well-aligned suite of reporting measures. I just wanted to flag that there is one supplementary audit report that we will be required to do. So that is an additional item. It has to do with demonstrating, invalidating our particular investments in specific projects, which was something that was considered quite important for federal reporting. So we'll be doing that, but I certainly can say I have every confidence in TAF's current management that will not be a heavy issue for us. The other one is that, as Kate was saying, the federal government cycle ends at March 31st, where our cycle ends at the end of the calendar year, so there'll be some jiggling around there to try and sync up our reports, but we've already kind of got that figured out, so I think that's going to be very manageable. So happy to answer questions about this reporting, but I think it's pretty aligned. The last thing I'll say about this is that just reminding you that this reporting has two purposes. One is an accountability purpose to provide the reporting through FCM back to the federal government. But the other that's really important part of this is that we're contributing this reporting to be combined with similar reports from all the other centers so that we can examine the data that comes through and draw comparisons, facilitate learning by looking at this. So this is also be reporting that is utilized. It's not just for accountability, it's for utilization to improve outcomes for all the centers, and we'll be planning to use that data accordingly. Next slide, please. In addition to the annual reporting requirements, there is a 5-year review that all of FCM's programs are subject to this review, so we have to be part of that. You can see here what's going to be required, what's going to be examined at that 5-year mark, and we will have to comply with that. Again, I would say that all of these items are well within TAF's existing management practice. I would feel very confident that we could supply the information needed, but that will be an additional requirement as well. Next slide, please. I just wanted to speak a little bit from TAF's perspective about what we can expect or what we might want to drive forward to leverage this network to the fullest to support TAF's work. Next slide, please. I think one thing I wanted to reinforce is that this idea of a network, this idea of a national office was a component part of the original vision of the Low Carbon Cities Canada project, because we felt that this was a way to allow TAF to work a little faster, a little smarter, and to drive our outcomes. So it's quite an exciting opportunity, I think, and I want to talk a little bit specifically about how we might leverage this. You know that TAF has done a lot of support of federal policy advocacy over the last few years. Now we have a natural alliance for that, and we don't have to shoulder the cost and effort of doing this work alone. We can have other conveners across the country to support us with this area of work, which is going to be absolutely critical to our success. We can also, I think, I've been called upon to offer the top lessons of TAF into the new centers. That's part of what I've been doing quite a bit, is drawing out lessons from TAF's 30 years of experience, distilling them and offering them to the other centers to help them take advantage of that. I would say one of the critical lessons is that cultivating grants and loans is extremely time consuming and difficult. If you're going to find ones that really have the impact that we are looking for, it's a lot of effort, and it sure will be nice to be able to consider ways to share that effort and cost across multiple centers in terms of potential for shared grant making and impact investing. So we'll be looking at that. As Kate mentioned, the national office has its own funds. This is shared funds, and we can offset some of our research and development costs that we might be doing on our own. We can offset some of our due diligence costs associated with impact investment, for example, or other things as we identify as a group that could create synergies and cost effectiveness. And finally, there will be some national fundraising. That's part of my role as well, is to scan the country for potential supporters and funders, and to consider how we can help create the match for all the other centers. TAF's achieved its match, but as part of the network, when we work together to raise funds across the country, and if we're successful in that, TAF would receive a prorated share of that as well. So it's an opportunity for us to do some shared fundraising as well. So those are some of the kinds of things that we may be able to leverage through this network. Next slide, please. One of the other most important things, I think, is about this idea of rapid prototyping for the GTHA. Now, right now, TAF does 2 prototype programs at a time. And listen, I know, and Julia knows, and our team knows, that this is heavy work. And we even say that if we're going to do more than one program, that's an internal program that we're creating and prototyping out, that we have to make sure they're at different levels. Like we can't do 2 programs at full speed. We have to one ramping and one peaking. So the idea that we can have, 5 other hosts out there doing prototypes as well, and then being able to share them across, it means that we are going to have a team of people just like us who are developing prototypes that we could bring here to the GTHA. And now this depends on this important fact, and it's a defining fact for Low Carbon Cities Canada, and that is we're designing everything for scale. This is a new thing. It's not the same as we've always done at TAF. It's different. And it's really critical because we need to think about not just creating something that can work in our own city region, but if there is any way to design to allow this to scale out through the other network, that's what we'll be doing. And we'll be expecting our colleagues to do the same. So it will facilitate transfer of program designs among different cities. And different cities have different locuses of expertise. We have in Halifax, they have conservation utility model there that we'd die for that in Ontario. It would be awesome. And out west, we have a lot of very sophisticated new building leadership in green building regulation. So we're going to be able to draw on the expertise of the different areas and depending on what's happening there. And I think this will help us move faster in our own region as well. Thank you. Next slide, please. Kate mentioned that we are developing common theory of change and associated key performance indicators. All centers will report against these same key performance indicators. Now, these are very high level and there'll be supplementary indicators too, and they'll have to do with looking at getting ourselves focused on the highest impact carbon reduction, and there'll be metrics associated with our success in positioning things for scale. And so we'll be able to compare those apples to apples among all these different centers. We have the same mandate, reporting against the same metrics, and this accelerates our ability to see who's doing great on what and how can we learn, and it'll really facilitate and sort of soup up this knowledge transfer opportunity. Next slide, please. Again, there's going to be, a strong peer network. We have new people being hired now. We're going to have 5 new executive directors and associated teams, including in impact investing and program design and evaluation. So this is a whole set of really new staff and their associated volunteer boards of directors, investment and grants committees, and community partners. And we can draw from all of that, and we'll be facilitating that actively from the national office as well. Next slide, please. I just wanted to finish with this reflection because I think TAF should feel very good about the idea that its DNA is being replicated across the country. And this is a real success story that TAF can claim, and I think we should. This has been based on your work, based on the efforts of TAF over the years, and now this is being absorbed into different areas. It's going to evolve as it always does at TAF. There's new things coming too, but the centers are really appreciating and drawing on all the knowledge that's been developed because TAF's been able to be doing this work for so long already. So that's a real feather in the cap of TAF, and an exciting story to tell as well. Thank you. Next slide. Kate and I are happy to answer any questions that you might have about the national office now or anytime. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mary and Kate. Parminder, are you on the line, Mr. Chair? Do you want to take the seat here, or should I continue?
Hi, Councillor Layton. No, I'm on the line, but it's probably easier if you can just continue.
Okay, I'll do that. First, Julia, did you want to finish off the presentation with any words, or no? We can go straight to questions. Are there any questions from the panel, from members of the board?
Hello.
I don't see. Councillor Carroll, go ahead.
Yeah, just one. And really, it goes to Mary's wrap up. It's so long ago that the proposal to have the national program and the negotiations took such a long time. I'm wondering if there are any plans now that it really is in place and all the supports are in place to make a presentation at any standing committee of city council, so the council really knows that Tiny TAF has become this national thing? Because I'm not sure it's actually known throughout the 25 members of council.
Sounds like a great idea. I think we should plan it when we have the papers signed. I think that would be great. Maybe this fall, in the last quarter of the year, we could do that. And we certainly would be happy to. And I think that's a great idea.
Because we have a couple of members of the panel who are members of the Environment Committee, which is, I think, the natural place. So I'll leave it to them. When the deal is signed, it definitely should be presented in the Standing Committee.
And I'll point out that one of the values of getting some familiarity with these remote meetings is that we've been meeting, as Mary and Kate have said, weekly for a long time, and we're doing this remotely, and it's very functional. So, being able to see and hear from our colleagues from across the country just got a lot easier.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
So one, I wanted to say, Mary, this is really amazing work. This is back here. And I just wanted to congratulate you on it. And I know it's been hard work. It looks great. I might have missed it just because as you went through the presentation, but in terms of the next steps and in terms of helping you mentioned some areas in which TAP and the other agencies of the LC3s could consolidate their effort and stuff. And one topic we've talked about before is on the private investing side. And so what are the next steps in terms of fleshing this out further? I imagine there's many more of these weekly meetings coming in. You might give us a sense of what's coming down the line.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Deepak. It's nice to see you or hear you. And here's some next steps on that front. At the moment, TAF is positioning itself to provide some service into the network, that's paid service, to transfer its knowledge and also to explore opportunities to do collaborative investment. And we will be supporting that with some outreach to other potential collaborators, investment collaborators and advisors. So stay tuned on that one. And, I think the other thing we're doing is working on our shared theory of change and so forth. This is really going to ground how we do this work, how we do all of our programs to support scale. And I think it just seems natural to me that that's going to lead to some more collaborative effort on all fronts, including impact investing. So we're very interested. That's all. We're, peeling off the layers of the onion here. We're looking at all the opportunities and in some detail over the next 4 to 6 months.
Oh, great. I was going to say, I really like the way you laid the foundation for it because it sets you up nicely for that. And I do think that a bunch of shared services will be valuable, hosted not just by TAF, some of them ideally by other centers or whatever over time, And anyhow, I'll talk to you offline about it because I know I disappeared for a bit there.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I have Jacqueline, Director Lowen.
Mary, congratulations, and fantastic to see you. And I found your presentation very succinct and easy to quickly grasp very big strategies that you're putting into play. I love the rapid prototyping process. And then I was interested that we have Mr. Klein comes to our investment committee. I'd love to hear from him what's happening from the other groups. Like, what if we can learn as well from them? Like, we're talking about working smarter and faster, and cross divisional, cross teams learning. I'd like to be hearing what are the other groups doing if they are. I know it's early stage. Thank you.
Good morning. It's Kate here. Jeremy would be delighted to. I think it is early days. He's only attended, I believe, the investment committee meetings of Alberta EcoTrust to date because we're still in the process of transferring the funds. But in addition to participating on the investment committees of the centers, Jeremy is also responsible for managing from within GMF, the GMF fund, which is a $1 billion fund. So there's definitely opportunities for learnings from the centers and for us to work together going forward if there's an appetite for it. So definitely we can take that as a follow-up action item. Thanks.
Kareem?
Thanks. Great work, everybody. Just a question about whether there would be value at some point, and I know this maybe needs to be curated a bit, to have the boards of the different LC3 entities be able to convene at some point, potentially just to help give stakeholder and kind of political lift to some of the great work you're doing. Obviously, there's a governance role through FCM, but I think the individual boards of the organizations might find benefit in engaging with each other and with the national office.
Yeah, I think that would be a fantastic idea to have a bit of a summit once we get our legs. We're trying to get those, those organizations are just trying to get up off the ground. But I could certainly see that in 9 to 12 months to be able to, that's power stuff. You know what I mean? To have all those thinkers and, meeting with one another. It's like a peer-to-peer process. And I think that's definitely something that is, the national office is ideally suited to do, to try to build those connections.
Well, just a thought on that. And I think that one cycle that we might be able to think about doing that on is in the context of strategic planning. And, in order to, we have sort of a regular bit of a cycle about, what's new, what's coming, where do we need to be, what have we accomplished, and we can do some of that work with our colleagues from across the country so that we're not reinventing wheels, so that we are sort of sharing that load. So it seems that, there may be some ongoing points, but certainly from a strategic planning, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Jacqueline, did I see your hand go up again?
Yeah, I thought that was a brilliant comment. And one way to, a lot of times strategy happens. It's messy. It's out in the corridor. It's by the coffee pots. We don't have the coffee pots right now with COVID. But to give us even a directory, go-to place with a directory where we can see everyone else and connect up to everyone that way, I think is more helpful, because it's often these conversations that happen outside of the board that add so much value.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments to the item? I'm just trying to scan the board here of our members, so speak up if I'm not calling your name. With that, I'll just send my thanks to Kate and for Mary for their presentations today. I think we're all very excited about this next step. I have just sent an email to the clerk to hold the item at council, just so at least I can very quickly give praise to those from the TAF team that give well-deserved praise to the TAF team that's involved nationally and locally to push this matter forward. I will clarify one thing that Kate had said. I'm no longer on the board of FCM. I stepped down when the second child arrived, and I wasn't able to participate in 5-week-long meetings of the board. I believe Councillor Carroll was also on there for many years, but as part of the downsizing of council and our contingent that's sent to FCM, we have a much smaller footprint at FCM these days, although Councillor McKelvey, I know, has been appointed to the Green Municipal Fund, which is very exciting, and we're very fortunate to have her there. So with that, can I have a motion from Councillor McKelvey to receive the presentations? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. It was very nice to see you, Mary and Kate, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for the opportunity.
We'll move back to item TA 8.1, and that's the Chief Executive Officer's report. Julia?
Great. Good. 2 seconds. Am I muted? All right. Thank you. So I will not read my report, but just flag some priorities that I want to focus everybody's attention on. We're, as you know, still working remotely, but everybody's working. We've got some plans in place and some mechanisms to really support staff in this work from home period. It is, there are some trials and tribulations with this, but I think everybody is really sort of digging in. And we have had a few staff changes. We're going to be ramping up. Now we're unpausing a few hiring of a couple of positions that we had paused at the beginning of the year. So there's a lot of activity at the staff level. The Tower-wise work is back on. Though within the context of health and safety issues, just some protocols needed to be in place. And lots of activity there. You're going to see, you have a report in front of you about a new project that we've been busy developing through the Tower-wise team. And really a lot of the focus in the buildings area has been to make this move from demonstration to scaled implementation through this retrofit delivery center, which is getting a lot of traction from our colleagues in the industry side, in the nonprofit side, also on the government side. And so we're doing we've made some investment in it ourselves through the program allocations that have been approved by the board last year. But really what we're trying to do is attract some additional resources at the scale needed for implementation in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, and to look at how we move this not only from local to national through federal programming, which is a whole other sort of aspect of work in addition to our local work. Let's see. So we've been working still on the clean fuel standard. You might have seen some attention to that in the news. It is a really big, important policy that would reduce in the order of 30 megatons of carbon, which is analogous to the coal phase out in Ontario. And it's kind of gotten it's gotten buffeted around, but it really would do a huge amount of the heavy lifting for the GTHA and Canada-wide. And so it's remained very much a priority for us, along with the Ontario Energy Board work. If anybody has any additional questions about some of these are snapshots of the work that we're doing, but we're happy to provide further detail. And the Ontario Energy Board, as the regulator of both the electricity and the gas industry, is a really key intervention point for how we reduce carbon in our cities. I also want to flag, if anybody is from, I don't think you are, but knows people in Whitby or in the areas around Whitby, we are making a really big push, along with a variety of other organizations, to get the Whitby Green Standard implemented. If you recall, back in 2010, through work that TAF had done with the condo sector, we got the Toronto Green Standard implemented with the full leadership of the City of Toronto's planning department and other departments. And it has gone through now 3 versions. It has been very successful at raising the bar on emission to avoid emissions from new construction. Whitby is the first other municipality in the GTHA, in fact, in Ontario, taking this initiative. And we feel it's a really important leadership position. Beachhead could help other municipalities with the impetus to move this. Obviously, it's, one can expect it's facing some headwinds locally, but it's also got some strong support. And the key thing is to convey to the mayor, who is very supportive, and council, and the people locally, the developers locally, that this is of great value by saving people a lot of money and reducing carbon. That it's totally doable. People that development will not be adversely affected by this. In fact, it will have great value. So contact us later if you'd like a briefing note. We do have one. We had a blog. And really the key is to sort of keep this on the agenda. It was supposed to be in July, but it's now deferred till fall. So we have a bit of opportunity to make the case. So just want to highlight that. You're going to see a couple of direct investments on the, one direct investment on the agenda, but the impact investing team is working away on quite a large pipeline of transactions. And the renewable gas area is really a big focus for us, and we're starting to do a lot more outreach to potential co-investors, project developers, equipment suppliers, the whole value chain there. Something sort of on the heels of the presentation that we just had, as you know, we're still subject to confirmation from the government, which, Kate, I think we're hoping for this week. We had the opportunity to shift up to $2 million, and we've elected to shift $2 million from endowment to operating funds. And we're looking at how to allocate that appropriately. My recommendation, which needs to be operationalized, of course, in budgets, so would be in the budget that we would prepare for 2021, is that we should retain a million of that 2 million for at least 3 years as a buffer on the nominal value. So basically, if you recall from the funding agreement, the fund assets is everything. So not only the endowment, but the operating. And we have to protect against dips below the nominal value. If we do dip, obviously we have opportunity to recover that. But it does require some effort in terms of recovery plans. It may dampen potential for spending in order to respond. And so until such time as we build up some of our fund value, having that million as a buffer would be, just a nice management tool to have. And that we would spend the other million on our normal operating costs. So that would be, whatever we decide is the appropriate approach. That could be grants, that could be programs, that could be admin, although we have a limit, of course, on admin. So it gives us some flexibility. As indicated in the report last week or 2 weeks ago, we had pre-spent some of the federal endowment, which was allowed through the FCM agreement. And we'd used Toronto proceeds to do that. The first, I think Rob has indicated that we've pre-spent about 200,000 of that starting last year. So that will be the first payment out of the 1 million operating, and then we'll bring you a budget for 2021 that would propose additional spending out of that 1 million. So if there's any sort of perspectives on that, or we'd like to sort of get some of that into our heads now, because we're starting into budget process pretty soon, like in the fall. And then on communications, Julie has provided some perspectives on what we're working on right now, some of the focus areas, some of the audience reach that we are making some inroads on, which is always great to see. So those are the key points. Any questions? Happy to take that.
Are there any questions of Julia? Yes, Kim.
Thank you. Julie, I just made a note of something you said, that just prep for the fall budget process. That's a good reminder for us. And if there's as we go through a lot of change, particularly with the additional funds coming in, and the word scale's been used a lot today. So please let us know how you want us and the committee, and I'm looking at Jacqueline, the investment committee, to help you through that process, if at all. So.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, just very quickly, Julia, I'm happy to reach out to some colleagues in Whitby, particularly around the Labor Council there. I think there is an ability to mobilize them around sustainability initiatives. I recently spoke at a Ontario-wide Labor Council event all about this was pre-COVID, of course, all about the environment and what cities can do, and there was a lot of interest there. I can't recall if anyone from Durham was there, but I'm sure someone was. And we can see if we can activate that group, who very likely had contacts with at least one friendly counselor that can help champion it. So I'll reach out directly to you with that.
Great.
Can I get a motion to receive the presentation? Director Lowen, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. The next item is TA 8.3, minutes of the investment committee held May 25th, 2020. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that report? If not, I'll take a motion to receive. Kim, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. TE 8.4, minutes of investment committee held June 18th, 2020. Are there any questions or comments about that report? Seeing none, a motion from Kim, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. The next item has a confidential attachment. It's TA 8.5, direct investment request 2020 number 3. Does anyone want to, do we have to go in camera for that item? Are there questions or comments that need to be made in camera? I don't see any. Are there questions or comments to be made public? Then I would entertain.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Yep, Shelley.
This is just it's a quick public question. I don't think I need to go in camera for it. Just to ask, because it relates, there's made mention in the CEO's report. I read it last night, so I can't remember where, but I don't know if Julia mentioned it today. That TowerWise is actually making a video, a sort of citizen user-friendly video about heat pumps and how they function. Any idea when that will be ready exactly?
Brian, do you know? Or Fatima?
Hey everyone, it's Fatima. I don't have a date, but I can follow up with you on that. I know that we have some material on heat pumps already.
Well, the reason I ask is a video seems like a super simple thing, and to really get the word out there. And I think it's going to be very helpful in TCHC retrofits. We can get that ready, and as we partner on these retrofits, if the heat pump is a component of it, it's the kind of thing that you could send out to residents. And challenges that we face around people working in TCHC properties and around TCHC properties, challenges that we face with the residents when that comes up, it would be so great to be able to just show them a video. This is what's going to happen. This is how it functions, and this is how it's going to change your life, because there's a real resistance every time you go in there to do work, because they sort of have infrastructure burnout, because we're not the only ones working in that space trying to upgrade those properties, and so there's a lot of resistance. So here comes another crew. What's this going to do? And one of these projects, it includes that component, and I know the property well. It's going to make a huge difference. But getting the word to the residents so that they are as helpful as possible to the contractors going in. I'm overjoyed to hear that TowerWise is doing a simple communication piece like this. So as soon as it's available, I don't think I need to move a motion, but there should be an undertaking that we make it really clear to the TCHC team that that thing is available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Oh, Julia, do you want to?
Yes, just one thing. I did receive some questions from our colleagues at the city because, as indicated, this the funding that will be used for this transaction is through. It includes capital that we have borrowed from the Green Municipal Fund. So basically, I want to indicate to the board, similarly, I did provide that, but previously to our colleagues, is that the conditions that council established for that loan are either met in compliance, or we have, because the loan has not been drawn, and we don't anticipate that any of the funds from the loan will be drawn until January 2021 at the earliest. The security documents which pertain to that loan have been negotiated with FCM but not executed, and will be provided to our colleagues at the city for consideration. So we are aware of and looking to actually meet all of the conditionalities.
Great. Thank you very much. Julia, are there any other questions or comments? No, I'll take a motion to adopt the recommendations from the investment committee. Councillor McKelvey, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. The next item on the agenda is TE 8.6, unaudited financial reports for the second quarter of 2020. Are there any questions of staff? Are there any comments? No? I'll take a motion then to, is it receipt of these? Just let me check quickly.
Yeah.
It is.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. Our next item is TA 8.7, request for investment and hiring of a second fixed income manager. We have a confidential attachment. Does anyone wish to ask questions of a confidential nature? Director Lowenwood. So,
I just wanted to comment on that. I was part of the committee in regards to it, and they're going to fill out. This other group is going to fill out the credit part of the updated SIOP allocation. So it fits the strategic allocation that's set to us by the city. And so managing bonds is 100% of this particular group's business. And they manage 3 bond funds of varying risk and return levels. So they're highly specialized in this is becoming a very highly, a very difficult area of the market. So I'm very confident in having specialists focus on that.
great. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of staff for this one? And any other comments? Well, seeing none, I have a technical amendment that staff has requested for the clerk sent across, and this is to add the words, and I'll let them put it on the screen. I think it just says something in relation to the city manager's team. To add via the city manager's office in the requests of the City of Toronto's Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? That item carries, and that concludes our business for today. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much for your participation.
Mr. Chair, that last motion, that was on the amendment and the item is amended, or did you want to do a separate
I got
vote?
a little too excited, so let's take the item as amended, everyone. I want to leave that loose end hanging. Thank you very much, Carol. And we'll call that approved. And now that concludes our business for today. Everyone, please have a healthy and happy and most of all, socially distanced summer. And I think the next time we will see you is actually several months away. So I expect this beard to be longer. Preen, I expect your hair to be longer. And please, everyone, be safe.
Okay. Thanks all.
Bye,
Have a great summer.
everyone.
Bye-bye.